How does tarot actually work? The principle of interaction. When a person first takes a tarot deck into their hands, one question arises almost inevitably. How does it actually work? What makes ordinary pieces of card, printed with images, suddenly offer answers that can be so precise, so profound, and at times even unsettlingly accurate? Why, from among dozens of cards in the deck, does this particular one appear before us at this particular moment, as though it somehow knows what is happening within us? To come closer to understanding the nature of tarot, we need to move beyond an explanation that is limited to logic alone. If we look at the cards merely as physical objects, then all we truly see is paper, ink, and symbolic imagery. Yet tarot begins to come alive when we perceive it as a living system of images capable of reflecting a person's inner reality. And then something becomes clear. Its essence does not lie in the card itself, in the ink, or in the mechanics of drawing from a deck. It lies in the particular language through which the deeper layers of consciousness begin to speak to us. First and foremost, tarot works through the language of symbols and archetypes. Each card is more than a beautiful illustration. It is an image saturated with metaphors, meanings, and associations connected with human experience across thousands of years. We may know nothing of occult treatises. We may never have read specialist books or studied esoteric traditions, and yet we can still intuitively sense what is expressed by the image of a young person standing at the edge of a precipice, face lifted towards the sky. Something immediately stirs within us: risk, innocence, beginning, trust, openness to the unknown. In the same way, the stern figure holding a sword and scales in the Justice card awakens an entirely different layer of perception: law, judgment, balance, responsibility, and the need to face the consequences of one's choices. Why does this happen? Because such images speak less to the rational mind than to the unconscious. They move past dry logic and enter us through feeling, through instant recognition, through association. A card does not deliver information in the form of a finished sentence. Instead, it sets in motion an entire cascade of sensations, memories, intuitions, impressions, and inner images. It is within this associative process that understanding begins to take shape. The power of tarot, therefore, does not lie in the physical object as such. The cards do not become miraculous simply because they have been printed in a particular way. Their true power is revealed in the way an image activates the human subconscious. The tarot deck may be seen as a kind of screen upon which hidden states of the inner world are projected: motivations, desires, anxieties, fears, suppressed doubts, and hopes that have not yet been fully recognized. A person looks at a card and, in a sense, begins to see themselves, only now in symbolic form. This is very similar to the language of dreams. When a road, a staircase, water, a house, a pair of shoes, or a closed door appears in a dream, we often feel that these are more than random objects. Something lies behind them. Some meaning is seeking expression. The subconscious rarely speaks to us through dry, logical formulas. It needs an image. It needs a symbol. Tarot works in much the same way. It uses visual scenes to awaken archetypal layers of the psyche and to make visible what has not yet found its way into words. From a psychological perspective, the principle of projection is also at work. When a person looks at a card, they instinctively begin to notice precisely those details that carry particular significance for their inner state at that moment. One person may see danger, another may see a fortunate opportunity, a third may perceive a warning, while a fourth may experience the same image as liberation. The card has not changed. The inner response has. Why? because the image becomes a surface upon which personal inner content can reveal itself. This can be compared to two people standing before the same painting in a museum. One may remain absorbed in the expression on the face of a figure, while the other notices only the dark sky in the background. They are looking at the same work, yet each is drawn towards something different. The same process takes place in tarot. We do not see only the image before us, we also encounter something of our own inner state within it. In psychology, a similar process can be found in the method of active imagination, through which an external image becomes a doorway to deeper insights arising from within consciousness. In this sense, tarot becomes a tool for entering into dialogue with those parts of ourselves that usually remain beneath the surface of everyday thought. Yet the principle of interaction with tarot cannot be fully explained through psychology alone. There is always another layer present in the work with the cards, an energetic one. Each card carries a particular vibration, a particular charge of meaning, a particular quality of the field. When a person formulates a question, holds their attention upon it, shuffles the deck and draws a card, something more takes place than the mechanical movement of the hand. A process of attunement begins between the person's inner question and the symbolic field of the deck. The power of intention plays an immense role here. The thought upon which a person is focused seems to become a kind of magnet, drawing towards itself the image that is needed in that moment. From the external mechanics, the card that appears may be regarded as chance, yet at a deeper level, an alignment takes place between inner content and outer symbol. It is here that we come to the concept of synchronicity. Carl Gustav Jung used the term synchronicity to describe events that are not connected by a direct chain of logical causation, yet are united by meaning. Outwardly, a card may have been selected at random, and yet its meaning can correspond with astonishing precision to the inner process through which a person is moving. Such a correspondence can feel almost miraculous. Yet, what we may be encountering is a hidden order in which the psychological, symbolic, and energetic dimensions of experience meet. We might express it another way. Tarot does not necessarily tell a person something that is foreign to them. It illuminates what is already present within their field, yet has not been fully brought into awareness. This is why a card can sometimes feel almost unsettlingly accurate. It is not because the card knows the future, as though it were a film that has already been made. Rather, it can reveal with remarkable clarity a direction, a tendency, a hidden cause, or an inner knot within the present moment. There is something subtle and important to understand here. Tarot works through attention. It asks for concentration, inner honesty, and a willingness to see what is pleasant as well as what may be uncomfortable. When a person approaches the cards only superficially, simply for entertainment, they may see little more than beautiful images. But when a question carries a genuine intention to understand the essence of what is happening, the symbol begins to open in layers. The cards can reveal where a person is deceiving themselves, where fear is shaping their actions, where obvious signs are being ignored, and where hidden possibilities have not yet been recognized. They illuminate inner processes and help us understand the direction in which a situation is moving. They offer orientation. Different approaches to working with tarot: divination, interpretation, psychology, archetypes, and the path of development. When a person first discovers the system of tarot cards, a natural question almost always arises. What is tarot really? Is it magic, prediction, a means of self-knowledge, a psychological tool, or something else entirely, something that does not fit neatly within familiar categories? The truth is that tarot cannot be reduced to a single definition. It is not merely a deck of cards, nor is it only a technique for reading answers. It is a multi-layered system in which symbol, observation, intuition, archetypal knowledge, and the ability to perceive hidden processes come together. This is precisely why tarot can be approached in many different ways. Through the cards, we can explore the probable development of events. We can unravel psychological patterns and inner conflicts. We can study ancient archetypes or use tarot as a tool for inner growth and spiritual movement. Each of these dimensions exists within the same deck, yet each reveals itself according to the intention with which we approach the cards and the depth at which we are prepared to engage with them.
One of the remarkable qualities of tarot is that it does not stand in opposition to other systems of self-knowledge. On the contrary, it combines with them with surprising ease. Tarot intersects with astrology, numerology, archetypal psychology, the philosophy of symbols, and even spiritual practices of self-observation. For this reason, to limit tarot to the single word divination would be inaccurate. It would mean seeing only the outermost layer of a vast and complex system. And yet, the first and most widespread way of working with tarot is what is commonly called the divinatory or predictive approach. This is the form with which most people are familiar. A person comes with a specific question. Will the business deal be successful? Will a former partner return? Will the move take place? Will the new job work out? In this approach, the cards are read as signs pointing towards the direction in which events are moving. Through them, it is possible to see what stage a situation has reached, what forces are already active within it, where the risks lie, where hidden resources may be found, and what the situation may lead to if the person continues to move in the same way. It is important to understand that even the predictive approach, when practiced with skill and depth, is not a primitive attempt to guess the future. It is better understood as a reading of a field of possibilities, a momentary image of the energetic climate surrounding a person at a particular point in time. The cards do not reveal a frightening and unavoidable fate. They show the most probable scenario arising from the person's present thoughts, actions, fears, intentions, and circumstances. And it is here that one of the most important questions appears, a question that confuses almost every beginner. Is there a difference between fortune-telling and a deep interpretation of the cards? At first glance, they may seem to be the same thing. After all, both involve the use of tarot cards. In reality, however, the direction of the work is fundamentally different. Divination, in its everyday sense, attempts to predict the outcome of a situation. It seeks to give a person a ready-made answer, what will happen, when it will happen, and how it will end. Interpretation, however, explores the situation itself, its inner mechanics, its causes, the hidden influences at work, and the points at which choice is still possible. The focus, therefore, shifts from the future towards a deeper understanding of the present. In this sense, a fortune teller works primarily with the client's future, while a tarot reader works with the person's current inner state. A fortune teller may say, in a month, you will meet a man, move to another city, and your life will change. The message is presented as though the script has already been written. A tarot reader approaches the situation from another angle. What is preventing you from being open to a new relationship at this moment? Why does an old emotional story still remain active within you? What inner state may be delaying the changes you long for? Here, the cards cease to function merely as an oracle of events and become an instrument of awareness. The person is not handed a finished destiny. Instead, they are shown the inner point from which that destiny is beginning to take shape. One practitioner is more likely to say, "This is what will happen." Another helps the person explore a different question. What within you, your beliefs, reactions, fears, and desires, is creating this particular pattern in your life?
The cards may be exactly the same, yet the direction of attention is entirely different. In fortune-telling, the gaze moves forwards, towards an event that has not yet taken place. In tarot interpretation, the movement goes deeper, towards an understanding of causes. And there is an even subtler layer to this distinction. A fortune teller gives an answer. A tarot reader helps a person discover the right question. For the fortune teller, the cards are a means of revealing an outcome. For the tarot reader, they are a language of symbols. The fortune teller predicts, the tarot reader reflects. A prediction is often experienced as something external, as though information were being delivered to a person from somewhere outside themselves. The interpretation offered by a tarot reader works differently. It reflects back to the person their own inner landscape, expressed through symbolic form. The card does not simply show what is certain to happen. It reveals what is already taking shape within the person and therefore beginning to draw particular consequences into their life. And this is where freedom appears, because when a developing pattern is recognized in time, it may still be changed. One of the most important practical values of tarot lies precisely here. The cards do not pass judgment. They reveal the line of probability along which the energy of a situation is currently moving, and any such line can be altered through awareness. The very way in which the cards are read can also differ greatly. A fortune teller will often rely on rigid, fixed meanings. The Tower means destruction, therefore trouble is coming. The Three of Swords means pain and tears, therefore there will be a separation. The Devil means dependency, therefore everything is wrong. This approach resembles the reading of predetermined formulas.
A tarot reader, however, works through observation of the living symbol. The same tower may indeed point to an external crisis, yet it may also speak of the collapse of outdated beliefs, painful maturation, liberation from a false structure, or an inner escape from the prison of old wave of thinking. The card remains the same, but its meaning unfolds through the context of the person, the surrounding cards, the energy of the question, and the depth of interpretation. For the fortune teller, a card may function as a ready-made label. For the tarot reader, it reveals a multi-layered image. And finally, the fortune teller tends to speak mainly about what is happening externally, while the tarot reader seeks to understand the inner source of what is unfolding. When a person looks only for external answers, it can seem as though everything depends on chance, fate, other people, circumstances, and coincidence. Yet serious work with tarot gradually reveals another pattern. External reality very often becomes a continuation of our inner attitudes and unconscious structures.
Our fears create particular patterns of avoidance. Our beliefs influence the kinds of people we allow into our lives. Our suppressed emotions affect our decisions far more deeply than we often realize. The outer world reflects the inner condition of the soul. When a person lives in constant expectation of threat, they begin to read the world as a dangerous place and unconsciously become involved in precisely those situations that confirm their anxiety. When someone believes they are unworthy of love, they may repeatedly choose emotionally unavailable partners. When a deep expectation of mistrust or scarcity lives within, even a genuine opportunity may be perceived as a danger. Tarot helps us to see these hidden mechanisms. This is why a true tarot reader does not simply attempt to guess events. They help a person recognize their own patterns and become aware of the inner point from which they are currently shaping their life. And here lies an essential lesson for every future practitioner. The cards can be used at very different levels of depth. One may remain at the level of the simple question, "What will happen?" In that case, tarot becomes a collection of predictive signals.
Or one can learn to ask a different kind of question. Why is this taking shape, and what within me is connected to it? At that point, the tarot deck becomes a far more serious instrument of understanding. It is here that the transition begins from everyday fortune-telling to the true art of interpretation. Tarot reveals itself only as deeply as we are prepared to look, not merely into the cards, but into the very nature of human life. It could be said this way: the fortune teller searches for answers in the future, while the tarot reader searches for answers within the person, so that the future may be consciously shaped. Tarot does not divide people into those who are right and those who are wrong. Both a fortune teller and a tarot reader may be sincere in their work, yet the path of the tarot reader is distinguished by a conscious reading of symbols, a way of seeing in which fear and fatalism give way to understanding, choice, and inner freedom. The multi-layered nature of tarot, from prediction to inner exploration. It would be far too limiting to view tarot solely as a system concerned with the future. Yes, many people first turn to the cards with a desire to know what lies ahead, how circumstances may unfold, or how a particular situation might end. And indeed, a predictive dimension does exist within tarot. The cards can reveal probable directions in which events may develop, warn of approaching turning points, and bring hidden tendencies into view. Yet if we remain only at this level, we see no more than the outermost layer of a vast and intricate system. Tarot reaches far deeper than simple prediction. Over time, many practitioners begin to use the cards as a tool for psychological exploration. In this approach, the tarot reader no longer acts as a seer delivering a ready-made future, but as a guide who helps a person understand themselves more deeply. The cards become a language of inner exploration through which it becomes possible to touch those layers of the personality that rarely enter conscious awareness in everyday life. Through the imagery of the arcana, a person may begin to recognize their desires, hidden fears, suppressed emotions, conflicting motivations, inner tensions, and the less obvious causes behind recurring patterns in their life. At this level, the card is no longer primarily answering the question, "What will happen?" Instead, it gently redirects attention toward another question, "Why am I experiencing this?" And with that, the depth of the work itself begins to change. Instead of the familiar question, "When will I meet the person I love?" an entirely different kind of inquiry begins to emerge. Why am I still afraid of intimacy? Which of my inner beliefs are preventing me from building a healthy relationship? What within me is not allowing another person to come close? Instead of asking, "Will I have money?" the questions become, "Why do I keep finding myself in a pattern of lack? What prevents me from receiving abundance?" It is in moments such as these that tarot ceases to function merely as an external oracle and becomes a subtle instrument of self-knowledge. And yet, even the psychological level does not reveal the full depth of the system. Moving further into the realm of the unconscious, we encounter the archetypal approach to tarot, an approach that resonates in many ways with the ideas of Carl Gustav Jung. Jung proposed that within the collective unconscious of humanity, there exist universal primordial images, known as archetypes. They appear in myths, religious narratives, dreams, ancient legends, and in symbolic systems that endure across centuries. This is one of the reasons tarot can resonate so deeply with the human being. It does not speak only through the logic of everyday life, but through the language of ancient inner images. This becomes especially clear in the major arcana. The first 22 cards of the tarot are not merely a collection of separate meanings, but an entire gallery of archetypal figures and states of consciousness. The magician, for example, carries the archetype of the initiator, willpower, conscious intention, the first deliberate impulse towards action. The high priestess embodies hidden knowledge, intuitive vision, and the ability to hear what cannot be seen. The emperor is connected with order, structure, authority, and stability.
Death reveals transition, the ending of an old cycle, and the inevitability of transformation.
When a person looks at these arcana, they encounter more than an image. They come into contact with a particular inner role through which their soul may be passing at that moment. The reading then becomes a form of exploration. Which archetype is active now? What does it ask of me? What is it trying to teach? What inner conflict is being revealed through it? In this sense, tarot becomes a tool not only for psychological insight, but also for the archetypal exploration of the self. And yet, the journey does not end there.
There is an even deeper approach to tarot, one that is developmental and spiritual in nature. At its foundation lies the idea of the hero's journey, the great path of the soul as it matures. According to this understanding, the major arcana do not describe isolated events, but successive stages in the inner evolution of a human being. The hero's journey begins with the Fool, with the pure and innocent spark of spirit that does not yet know life, and yet is already ready to step into the unknown. From there, the soul encounters will, knowledge, temptation, control, the collapse of illusion, solitude, crisis, revelation, inner deaths, and rebirths. It passes through trials of strength, faith, responsibility, love, pain, and liberation. And at the final point of the journey, it reaches the world, the symbol of wholeness, completion, and an inner union with oneself and with the universe. Yet this path is not a linear journey undertaken only once. Again and again, at different stages of our lives, we move through the circle of the arcana. In one period, a person may be living through the lessons of the hermit. In another, experiencing the force of the tower. In yet another, feeling the influence of judgment or temperance. This is why, within a spiritual approach, tarot becomes a map of consciousness, a kind of guide to the inner path, against which we can orient ourselves and ask, where am I now? What lesson am I moving through? What is this life situation trying to cultivate within me? And here, the cards begin to serve as navigation for the soul. In this way, tarot reveals itself across several dimensions at once. It can be a predictive tool, showing the probable course of events. It can become a psychological key to understanding the inner causes behind what is unfolding. It can function as an archetypal system, revealing the deep roles and patterns of the unconscious. And it can become a spiritual compass, helping a person to recognize and understand their own path of development. The same spread can be read from several perspectives at once, as a forecast of circumstances, as a reflection of an inner state, as an echo of unconscious archetypes, and as an indication of personal growth. It is precisely this multi-layered nature that makes tarot unique. It can be an accurate navigator in practical matters, an attentive diagnostician of the psyche, and a subtle guide into the deeper realms of the soul. For me personally, the system of tarot cards is a complete and living language, a language that every tarot reader gradually learns to speak in their own way. Some come to it through structured meanings and the techniques of prediction, others through psychoanalysis and the exploration of inner patterns, some through archetypes, myths, and symbols, and others experience the cards as an ancient book, guiding a human being along the path of the spirit. All of these paths are possible because tarot is a living system. What matters is understanding why you are taking a deck of cards into your hands, what answer you are seeking, and how honestly you are prepared to look into the layers that the cards begin to reveal.